Americans held hostage, abandoned behind enemy lines. Day 32.
Sad as it is, day 32, Americans abandoned by Joe Biden, trapped behind enemy lines of the Taliban. Taliban now holding up to 500 of our fellow citizens hostage, along with thousands of other U.S. visa and green card holders. They're all in serious danger, all hostages of the Taliban terrorists. Back here at home, the Biden administration is facing another crisis. Accusations of treason. They are now swirling around the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. Now, these are very serious allegations. As always on this program, we do believe in the presumption of innocence. It has served us well over these many years. We believe in due process. Nope, we don't follow the mob. We won't rush to judgment. But the revelations in an upcoming book from Bob Woodward and Robert Costa are extremely damning. If they are true, downright dangerous to this great republic. And tonight, Woodward and Costa, they have now put out a statement. They are fully standing behind their story in total. As the Washington Post reports, Chairman Milley made 2 secret phone calls to a Chinese official during Trump's final months in office to assure communist China that the United States was not planning an attack. Here's the key line, quote, in the book's account, Milley went so far as to pledge that he would, on his own, alert his counterpart in the event of a U.S. attack. In other words, give them a heads up. Milley allegedly telling his Chinese counterpart, quote, General Lee, you and I have known each other now for 5 years. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a surprise. Let me read that again. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. Either that line is false and Woodward and Costa's reporting is nothing but a total BS lie, or that would mean, the only option I see, is that Milley would be a traitor. I don't see any middle ground here. It's one way or the other. There's more in this whole thing, and it's equally damning. The upcoming book also alleging that General Milley sought to undermine President Trump's nuclear powers. And shortly after receiving a phone call from a very, hyperventilating Nancy Pelosi demanding that the nuclear football be taken away from President Trump, General Milley, according to this book, summoned his senior officers and informed them that he must be involved in any decision to launch nuclear weapons. Quote, looking each in the eye, Milley asked the officers to affirm that they had understood the authors right in what is considered an oath. The question is now simple. Was General Milley colluding with Nancy Pelosi, third in line to be president, second in line after Vice President Pence? Was he colluding with Pelosi to usurp the constitutional power and authority of the President of the United States, or, as he now states, was he just performing routine procedural training regarding a nuclear strike? If Milley was colluding with Pelosi to undermine the constitutional authority of the commander-in-chief, the president, and take away the president's ability to do his job as commander-in-chief, one of those jobs would be perhaps to launch a nuclear weapon, he would then be guilty of the very definition of insurrection. That's the Democrats' favorite word. And again, the president is the commander-in-chief. Our Constitution is clear. It authorizes the president and the president alone with that power and authority over our military. There is no constitutional authority granted to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, and certainly not the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Not anyone else but the president. Our republic is designed to prevent a military and political coup. That's why civilian leadership, the duly elected president of the United States, is the commander-in-chief in charge of the military. So what we're describing here is a constitutional crisis of the highest order, quote, an act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government. Now an investigation, a commission, it must be formed immediately. We don't have time to wait here. There are 3 critical steps that must be taken as part of any probe. 1, we need to talk to all of the people that were in that room that made that, quote, oath to General Milley when he made those comments and when he called his Chinese counterpart. 2, we need to see the transcripts of the calls, and that's the calls with Milley and China's counterpart and the calls with Nancy Pelosi. We need to know everything that Pelosi and Milley said and everything that they did. Were Milley and Pelosi colluding? Were they essentially staging a military political coup because they thought they knew better than Donald Trump, anointing themselves commander-in-chief? And obvious, by the way, and as obvious as Joe Biden's cognitive decline is, imagine what would happen if this were done to him. Imagine the outrage. And 3, Congress, by the way, they need to subpoena all of the documents, every single last one of them, and every single transcript. Now, according to Woodward and Costa, there are meeting notes, there are emails, there are letters, there are other documents, and maybe the most important of all, there are transcripts surrounding Milley's call with Pelosi and likely his counterpart in China. Plus, the U.S. monitors every single official phone call to China. There is definitely a record out there. Woodward and Costa say they have all this information. But while the serious matter is being investigated, due to the severity of the allegation and our belief in due process and the presumption of innocence, this is so serious. The only way I see to handle this is to immediately appoint a commission. It must be nonpartisan. General Milley, in the meantime, must be put on administrative leave, and that, of course, pending this full investigation. He is the highest-ranking military official in the U.S. And now one of 2 things is true. Milley is a dangerous traitor who could put our country in serious danger, or Woodward and Costa are liars. And if Woodward and Costa and the Washington Post are lying and slandering General Milley, because that would be slander, he will own the Washington Post and potentially probably a good chunk of, if not all of Amazon, considering Jeff Bezos owns both after a massive defamation suit. I don't know the answer tonight. I know it's serious enough that it needs immediate attention, immediate appointment of a commission, and we need immediate answers, and the American people have a right to see all of those transcripts sooner than later. They had no problem releasing transcripts of Donald Trump's calls with foreign leaders, so that should not be a problem, right? Now, tonight, Woodward and Costa, they are refuting allegations that their reporting is greatly exaggerating, which brings us to an important ethical question raised by the great one, Mark Levin, last night, right here on this show. If Woodward and Costa, if they're so confident in their reporting and a known traitor is at the helm of our military, then how could they possibly justify holding back such critical information of such great national importance for months? The Washington Post, are they okay with their reporters saving vital national security information of great importance to the entire country, to the American people? Hold it off as long as possible. After you finish your manuscript, and they got to produce the book after the editing, that process usually takes months. I've written 4 books. And then sell that information in the form of a book instead of alerting the American people right up front? Take a look.
Woodward and Costa are reporters for the Washington Post. It takes 2.5 to 3 months to print a book. That means Woodward and Costa and the Washington Post, if this is true, sat on this story for months and months. Why would 2 reporters sit on a story like this for months and months and allow this man, who I believe, if this is true, is utterly unhinged, to serve as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff? You have 2 so-called journalists who sat on this.
Now, at the very least, Woodward and Costa in the Washington Post, they have a duty to provide proof. They should release their transcripts to the public. They should prove it right now because it's such importance to the American people and our national security. Because of now dozens of top officials are calling on Milley to resign. That includes President Trump's acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, who says he did not authorize Milley's calls to China. That's a big deal in and of itself. And then you have General Keith Kellogg also calling on Milley to step down, along with more than a dozen top lawmakers. Even Alexander Vindman, remember the Democratic Party's star witness in the Ukraine impeachment hoax? He's calling on Milley to resign. Tonight, as always, we will grant the same presumption of innocence to Milley that we would for anyone else. It has served this program well over the many years we have done it, 25 years here at Fox, 33 years on radio. But the left and the media mob, they love to throw around the word insurrection. On the other channels, they talk about it almost every night. But now with one of our highest officials accused of plotting his very own insurrection, perhaps in conjunction with on some level with the Speaker of the House, to usurp and null and void the crystal clear constitutional role that the president has and the role defined in that Constitution for the president as commander-in-chief. Many on the left, they're silent tonight, including Joe Biden. Today had nothing but praise for General Milley. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.